Hello and welcome to another video. Today we're going to take a look at the Shadow Lowland Tantalus Noctowl core, this time with Shadow Lowland Tantalus on the lead. I know I also showcased this core last video, but I'm really trying to get a better understanding of Shadow Lowland Tantalus in the Open Great League before the World Championships, and I wanted to try it out as a lead as well. I think this is a very good core because with the Lowland Tantalus you need something which is good against fighting, and Mudboys and Noctowl fills that role pretty well. You can also go with something like a Pelipper, something like that. And then I've gone with Sableye and the safe swap because you need another response to fighting and something which performs pretty decent against Mudboys as well, so I think Sableye makes for a quite good safe swap on this team as well, although you are core broken by Umbreon and Lickitung, so you need to stay in against those in the lead, which is not ideal, but those are on the rarer side, I think. This team performed pretty decent for me overall in the beginning, but towards the end I started facing way too many Deoxys leads, and I'm assuming that might be the same for you because that Deoxys, Umbreon, Dewgong team that's going around right now is an absolute nightmare to face for this team, so I would suggest you save this team for maybe later when there aren't as many Deoxys leads, and then maybe try it out on a different day. But overall, this team, it didn't perform too well for me, but there were still some very good games in between and some quite cool tricks as well, if I may say so myself. So let's take a look at them. Going into the first game, we lead into Dedenne. A good lead for Shadow Lowland Tantalus. You can win every even shield scenario, straight drill run, although in the 2 shields, you only need to go for the Ice Punch towards the end. We can take this first discharge. The Dedenne gets to discharge after 5 and play rough after 7. So we can take that first one and then overfarm a little bit. They try to catch a move on Umbreon, so we swap into Noctowl because we don't really have a good response to Umbreon first of all, but also Noctowl does win the zero shield scenario against Umbreon, and Sableye actually doesn't perform too poorly against Dedenne despite it being a fairy type if you still have 2 shields on Sableye. So we can go for this Sky Attack against the Umbreon. We don't need switch advantage because as long as we have 2 shields on Sableye, we should be able to overcome that Dedenne as well, especially because it has taken a little bit of damage. And also we have a lot of energy on Shadow Lowland Tantalus, so we can go for another Sky Attack here. This is of course a pretty long and drawn out matchup, but as you're gonna see, they try to go for a last resort here, which I think you need to land 2 last resorts in order to take out Noctowl in this zero shield scenario. It doesn't quite take out the Noctowl, so we can make it to another Sky Attack before they make it to another move or before we get knocked out. They do shield it up, so they have switch advantage now, so we might as well bring in the Sableye, save the Noctowl as a catch later, and then they bring in the Dedenne on the Sableye. They go for a move after only 5, I think, so they can only be a discharge, but it will still do quite a lot of damage to the Sableye. So we go up to the return. A foul play only does about 28% here, so if I go for the foul play, I think they live it and get to another move, which I don't really want, so I would rather just overkill them with the return, because I don't really want to take a discharge even. Then they bring back in the Umbreon, we can take a foul play, it doesn't do that much damage. And then they do make it to another foul play here. I do let them get to another one because they're switch locked. So I could have gone for the foul play in order to take out the Umbreon, or I can just shield it up and then farm them all the way down, come out with a lot of energy. In the back, it is a Medicham. Sableye is pretty low. I'm not sure we'll be able to get 3 foul plays before they make it to an Ice Punch. So I go for the return instead because I have energy on Shadow Lowland Tantalus. So we can go for this return, put the Medicham very low, swap into the Shadow Lowland Tantalus and go for the drill run. And this would take out the Medicham if it weren't for the fact that the opponent top lefted in my charge move. Well played, opponent. Next game, lead into a boss wall. Very bad lead, so we swap into Sableye. This is not like ideal either because now they can make it to a lunge before we get to a move that's going to threaten them, because of course they do resist the foul play, and we do have to shield it up because it does about 41%. Then they bring in another Dedenne. I faced 2 Dedennes in the first 2 games with this team. What the hell? We go straight for the return and I'm looking at the health. I'm thinking I might be able to get switch advantage here, but I have to call the move correctly. If it's a play rough, I have to shield it. If it's a discharge, we can let it go, but it is the play rough. They would have been able to make it to a discharge and a play rough, so I had to make a call. I called it, and of course, they take me out. They get to another discharge on the Shadow Lowland Tantalus, and then we can farm them all the way down. I brought in my Shadow Lowland Tantalus, I just want to explain this. I brought it in straight away because I knew our switch timers are misaligned, so now I can bring in my Noctowl, and I don't think they can swap out immediately, so I'm going to be able to get in some wing attack damage here before they can swap out. I was hoping I would be able to grab a shield as well before the switch timer came up, but no, they do bring in their Frost Slash, and I throw a little bit too late. I'm throwing bait here because they basically have to shield, like they cannot let my Noctowl see that boss wall. The boss wall is already low enough at this point, and they would have to go for a superpower in order to take me out and then debuff themselves. So I'm very certain that they're gonna shield these moves. I also go for yet another Sky Attack. I'm not gonna make it to a Sky Attack and a Shadow Ball here, but this just forces them to throw their Avalanche a lot quicker than if I had gone for the Shadow Ball. Then they would have been able to overfarm a lot more. Now they go for the Avalanche immediately. It is 5 for the next one. It does about 25%. I don't really want to take it, so go for the Drill Run right before they get there. They do, of course, win CMP with the Frost Glass, and now we're 1 away from the Ice Punch. We do make it to the Ice Punch, but we lose CMP to the Bustle. I thought it was 2 away from the Superpower, but it was only 1 away. And they take out the Alolan Sandslash. Very close to overcoming a fighting lead. But next game, lead into an Azumarill. Very good lead. At least if they're not running Hydro Pump. Even if they run Hydro Pump, it's pretty good, but they swap into a Registeel. And this is one of the reasons why I really like Shadow Alolan Sandslash, because it can beat Registeel in the 2-shield scenario without taking a move from the Registeel. So you can come out of this with a lot of HP remaining after beating it. They go for a Zap Cannon to, of course, get the attack debuff, but now we can overfarm a little bit more, and then go for another Drill Run before they make it to another potential Zap Cannon debuff. So we go for this Drill Run to do big damage onto the Registeel, and then they make it to another move. So we, of course, can shield this, but now we can overfarm a lot. And then at this point we only need to go for the Ice Punch in order to take out the Registeel. It is kind of close whether or not this is enough, but we do have another one stored if they shield it up. They don't shield it up, and we come out with a lot of HP left on Shadow Alolan Sandslash and a lot of energy as well. I maybe should pivot out here into Noctowl before throwing this, because I am debuffed and this Drill Run really doesn't do a lot of damage. So I want to save the energy for when it does more damage, because it's no longer debuffed, and then bring in the Noctowl against this Azumarill. They're not running Ice Beam, which is very lucky, so we can take the first player off, overfarm quite a bit, and then go for a Sky Attack. I think they are at the Hydro Pump here, but I just didn't think they would throw it on alignment, so I should have just gone for the CMP here, because Noctowl does win CMP. Then I would have forced either the shield or take them out. They go for the Hydro Pump to take out my Noctowl instead, which, yeah, I should have just gone for the Sky Attack. A bit of a mistake by me, but now wait out the switch timer and then bring in Shadow Alolan Sandslash. They bring in their own Shadow Alolan Sandslash, so they're running an ABB team. We can make it to the first Drill Run. Of course, it takes 665 for the Drill Run, so we can outpace them to the next one as well. This does about 85% Shadow and Shadow, so it will take out the Shadow Alolan Sandslash. The Azumarill is dry after throwing that Hydro Pump, so we can just Shadow Claw them all the way down before they get to see our third Pokemon, and that is a good game. Next game, lead into a Lickitung. Yikes. We have to stay in. This is not a good matchup for Shadow Alolan Sandslash. We do wall their charge moves, but still, these Shadow Claws are just doing absolutely nothing, and Lickitung is, of course, very bulky. Drill Run is the correct move to go for in neutral situations usually, because it is more energy efficient, as they make it to a Body Slam. It takes the equivalent of 6 Shadow Claws for them to get to Body Slams for the first 2, and then 5.5 for the third one. We do go for an Ice Punch here, because I don't think I'll be able to make it to 3 Drill Runs, but it looks like 2 Ice Punches might be enough to take them out from this range. And it just about doesn't, so I decided to catch a potential Body Slam on my Sableye, but realized straight away that this was a mistake, because they were at the Power Whip, and it just doesn't make any sense for them to go for the Body Slam when they had the Power Whip loaded, so I should have caught it on Noctowl instead. Now they bring in an Alolan Sandslash, and from this, an Ice Punch only does about 39%, so I was hoping they would throw it immediately to not overfarm optimally, but instead they don't throw it, they just take the Shadow or the Foul Play, and then they overfarm appropriately. I was thinking in the moment, I knew that they were at 2 Ice Punches, but they let Lickitung. They're not going to be weak to Noctowl in the back, so I wanted to save my Sableye, so I expended 2 shields on it. This is a very questionable play, I think, especially looking at what comes in here. It is the Charizard. I absolutely have to land these Foul Plays on the Shadow Charizard. I cannot let them catch. If they bring in the Lickitung, I have to swap out, because I cannot let myself get licked down either. I saved the Foul Play on Sableye, bring in the Noctowl to wing attack them down. Hope that they would go for the Blast Burn immediately to not overfarm appropriately, because 1 Blast Burn is not enough. But instead, they shield up the Sky Attack, and then they farm up to right before I get to the Sky Attack, before going for this Blast Burn. And you do need like about 8 to 9 wing attacks before landing this Blast Burn, and they did get enough damage in, and now they still have a lot of energy on the Charizard. I can maybe bring in the Sableye, snipe them with the Foul Play, or hope that they would throw their energy too soon on the Shadow Alolan Sandslash and not come out with the Dragon Claw. That is what I try to do. They go up to the back-to-back Dragon Claw, one to take out the Shadow Alolan Sandslash, and the second one to take out the Sableye on the CMP. Very nice played by my opponent with my own Shadow Charizard, or my favorite Pokemon Shadow Charizard. Next game, very good lead into a Noctowl. They swap into a Surfetch and we respond with a Noctowl. Usually I've seen quite a few of these teams, not recently but in the past, and it's usually a Medicham in the back, so I would suggest you respond the Surfetch with a Noctowl and not with the Sableye. So we can't go for the Sky Attack before they make it to the potential Brave Bird after 8. They only throw the Night Slash, meaning they probably don't have Brave Bird, and now they threw after 6, so this can't be a close combat or a Brave Bird, so we can just let the Night Slash go and then farm them all the way down and come out with a lot of energy and a little bit of health left on Noctowl, enough to get to 2 Sky Attacks. Of course, these are not going to do a lot of damage to the Noctowl, but it's nice chip and it puts them into a range where we only have to land 1 Ice Punch with Shadow Lord and Sandslash. So we go for the second one to put them pretty low, and now we just let Noctowl get farmed down because we want to keep switch advantage. They make it to a Shadow Ball, we don't have to shield this. I'm expecting them to bring in another fighter here, so actually wait and don't tap anything because I want to bring in my Sableye as quickly as possible to not take a counter on my Shadow Lord and Sandslash. They see the Sableye and they immediately concede the match. I can't blame them for that. Next game, lead into a Registeel. Good lead for Shadow Lord and Sandslash. I would say you do lose the 0s and the 1s, but once again, in the 2s, they don't land a charge move, so they're only doing lock-on damage. So you're just coming out of this with so much HP remaining on Shadow Lord and Sandslash. They make it to a Focus Blast, which we can shield up. I also want to throw the Drill Runs before they get to a potential Zap Cannon because I don't want it to be debuffed. So I do throw this Drill Run before they get there. Of course, it takes the equivalent of 8 Shadow Claws for them to get to Zap Cannons and 7.5 to the Focus Blast. So we can shield up the second Focus Blast as well, load up some energy, and then go for an Ice Punch here. We can't quite farm them down, so we have to go for an Ice Punch here to take them out or grab the shield. It does take them out. We come out with a lot of health. I bring in my Sableye on the Medicham. Maybe I should have pivoted out into my soft counter in Noctowl and saved the Sableye. I'm just used to Sableye being the safe swap, but maybe there is a reason to do that because they're probably swapping out of the Medicham regardless. But then they bring in a Bastiodon. This is also a team that I would say you should probably start to be worried about. If you're seeing Registeel in the lead, most people just don't assume that there's another Steel type in the back. But you might need to start worrying about that because I see Junkis has just made a video with this team, and it is a very good team that I think Jason 2890 has hit the number 1 in the world with before. So yeah, definitely don't assume there's not a Bastiodon behind the Registeel lead in the future, in your future games today or tomorrow. As we go for the Drill Run on CMP, they just let the Bastiodon go. We bring in the Noctowl on the Medicham. They go for move after only 5. This is a very good play by my opponent to go for the Power Up Punch immediately because now the counters are doing more damage. And also they needed the extra counter damage and the boosted up Psychic because they're not running Ice Punch on the Medicham in order to take out Noctowl, because I'm not sure a Psychic would be quite enough to take out from this range, but with the boost, it is enough to take out. And then the counters are just doing too much damage. We can't make it to the Drill Run. We have to settle for the Ice Punch. Is this enough to take out the Medicham? Not quite. And we do lose that game, unfortunately. Next game, very good lead into a Shadow Dragonair. Although these Dragon Breath are doing quite a lot, you do win every even shield scenario. Although the Shadow Dragonair actually puts the Shadow Lord and Sandslash very low in the 2 shield scenario. We make it through the first Ice Punch. It does about 81%, so they have to shield it up. And then they try to CMP tie me, or maybe there was a little bit of lag. I'm of course not going to CMP tie the Shadow Dragonair because it does win CMP, but now we can overfarm a little bit more. It takes the equivalent of 6 Shadow Claws for the Dragonair to get to moves, and then 5.5 for the third one again. So we can make it to the Ice Punch to take out the Shadow Dragonair, and then bring in Sableye on the Medicham. They bring in a Shadow Charizard. We can make it to the foul play, and this will of course grab the shield from the Shadow Charizard. Shadow Charizard has to shield basically everything, and then they make it to 10 wing attacks. It takes 11 for them to get to a Dragon Claw plus a Blast Burn, so I can shield this safely, knowing that they won't get to a Blast Burn after this, even if it is the Dragon Claw. And then I have to throw the foul play immediately, which they realize very smartly, and then they go for the CMP with the Dragon Claw. I was considering going for the undercharge here, but I think I might be able to make it to a foul play against the Medicham, meaning it will have to expend energy in order to take me out if they don't want to take the foul play. They do decide to expend energy, and at this point I'm realizing I'm probably getting farmed down. I don't want that to happen, so I'm gonna bring in my Noctowl against this Medicham that has no energy. They won't make it to a Psychic. It wouldn't even be enough before I get to the Shadow Ball. A Sky Attack would actually also be enough, so they just concede the match. Next game, lead into a Dugong. annoyingly a very even matchup because it has gotten a drill run now, of course. We can make it to the drill run before they make it to a move. We of course want to throw it before a potential attack debuff. And then they make it to a move. It takes 5 for the first, 4 for the second, so they overfarmed by 1. We do shield it up. It is the drill run. I'm not quite sure this drill run is enough as I'm throwing it, but I'm thinking if they let it go and it's not quite enough, I can catch the next drill run on Noctowl. It's not quite enough, so I decide to catch the next move on Noctowl. And my opponent, it looked like they waited a turn to see what came in, and then they threw the Icy Wind into my Noctowl. I think it looked like it wasn't, like they weren't aware of it, but I actually think that they saw the Noctowl and that they threw the Icy Wind because of that. I think that was a very good play by my opponent, as I'm trying to figure out if I can make it to 3 Sky Attacks or I should go for 2 Shadow Balls, because 2 Shadow Balls is of course better than 2 Sky Attacks. I think I can make it to 3 Sky Attacks, but I can't quite make it to the third one. Bring in a Lowland Sandslash, they bring in a Swampert, we go for the drill run. I should probably go for the Ice Punch here because they're probably gonna shield this. And they do shield it. We bring in the Sableye, but because they have an energy advantage, my opponent wisely realizes that they will be able to get to 2 Earthquakes before I make it to 2 foul plays. So they go straight for it. It does big damage to the Sableye. I won't be able to make it to 2 foul plays now before they mud-shot me all the way down. So I just go for the Hail Mary return. And of course they shield it up. And then they farm me all the way down. Come out with almost 2 Hydro Cannons, or they're almost the 2 Hydro Cannons now. I think they're 1 away from it. So I'm just going to let my Lowland Sandslash go. And that is a good game. Very nice played by my opponent, especially that Icy Wind on Noctowl. Next game, lead into a Galarian Stunfisk. You do lose the 0s and the 1s here, but in the 2s you can go straight drill run. A drill run does about 54%. So after the Shadow Claws, 1 drill run will be enough to take out in the 2 shield scenario. We go straight for it. They do shield up the first one. You can't shield, even if they bait twice, you will still be able to win the 2 shield here. So I do shield up the first one. And then my opponent decides to go for a move after only 6 mud shots, so this can only be a Rock Slide, which I'm happy to take because it doesn't do that much damage. We can take it. And then overfarm up to the CMP tie, thinking that this zero run might be enough to take them out because it does about 54%, but they shield it up, so of course it's not going to take them out. It would have been very close. And because this was a CMP, they're dry and energy, and we don't really, like, Noctowl still has a pretty decent matchup against this, so we don't really need Twitch advantage, I don't feel. So bring in the Sableye, once again they throw off the 6, so this is only a Rock Slide. It takes 8 for the Earthquake, of course, so we can take it, and then overfarm quite a lot. I would usually go up to right before they get to the move and then wait a turn, but because the game was very stuttery in this game specifically, I do go for the CMP instead. I didn't really feel comfortable waiting a turn. They bring in a Lantern afterwards. Very lucky that they bring in the Lantern against Sableye and don't save it for the Noctowl. We can make it to 1 foul play, but we need to make it to a return to take them out here. And again, the game felt very stuttery. I don't know if it's just me, but I definitely didn't feel comfortable waiting a turn in this game. So instead I go for the CMP tie, but my opponent has realized that I've been going for the CMP ties way too often. So they actually catch the move on a Venusaur. But the Lantern is very low at this point, so I think we can just bring in the Noctowl. They get to 6 Vine Whips, so they're not quite at the Sludge Bomb. They have to settle for the Frenzy Plant. And now we can do 2 more wing attacks and then try and go for a CMP with the Thunderbolt, which would do about 58%. My opponent realizes I'm going to try to go for the CMP, so they overfarm instead, but the Shadow Ball just almost takes them out, and they realize there's no point in throwing the Thunderbolt, so they just concede the match. Next game, lead into a Deoxys. Very bad lead. We swap into Sableye, and the opponent responds with the Sableye, which is not really ideal because Sableye down energy in the mirror match is just going to lose in the 2 shields. So we can just go for the first one, and we will be able to, of course we will have to shield the 2. I should probably just let them get to the second one because a foul play is not quite enough from this range, and I realized that after I pressed it. So if they shield this, that's amazing, then I can just outpace to the third one. But if they no shield it, I want as much energy as possible, and I know that this is not quite gonna be enough, so I don't want to leave them with a little bit of HP. I would rather leave them with more HP and then shield up the foul play, because of course I want switch advantage. So I actually undercharge the foul play. Very risky, but again, I am very much practicing, so I do go for some very risky undercharges as well. They are 5 away from the next foul play. Can we farm them down? We got the perfect farm down. And then they bring in an Altaria. We can get two foul plays, but will we be able to get off both of them? This is going to be very close. Sableye is very low, but we do get off the second foul play as well. And now I'm thinking, they don't really have, like, they're not going to stay in to throw a move with their Altaria into Shadow Lord and Sandslash. I think they're gonna swap on immediately. Like, I'm very sure they're gonna swap on immediately. This is a bit of a risky play. If you're playing at lower elo, I wouldn't recommend doing this, but I'm at a quite high elo right now, so I'm thinking, if they're gonna swap out immediately, I don't want to give them an energy advantage, so I actually bring in my Noctowl expecting the swap, and they do swap into the Deoxys. That way I get an energy advantage, or I even out the energy advantage they got from earlier, because they are at 1 counter from the beginning of the match. So now we can make it to a Sky Attack and a Shadow Ball before they make it to a Thunderbolt and a Psycho Boost. They are at the Psycho Boost now. I go for the bait because I don't want this. I don't want to land a Shadow Ball before they take me out. They do shield up the bait, so we can make it to the Shadow Ball, and then I'm trying to see, can I make it to another Sky Attack? No, they're gonna farm me down. I don't want them to farm me down, so we have to swap into the Shadow Lord and Sandslash. They make it to a Thunderbolt. They does about half to the Lord and Sandslash. These counters are doing a lot, but we found them all the way down. Do they have a move on Altaria? They do not. They concede the match. They knew it was game over, and that is a very good game. Next game, lead into a Guzzlord, and this is actually a very even matchup. We can make it to the Ice Punch before they make it to a Brutal Swing or a Crunch. It takes 5 for the Crunch every time, and then 5-4 for the Brutal Swings. So they make it to a move here. I'm thinking Guzzlord is just never baiting, and the Lord and Sandslash was definitely my idea. So they go for the Brutal Swing, we do shield it up, and then we can make it to an Ice Punch before they make it to the next one. As I say, it's 5 then 4, so we can take the shield, and then I don't really want to take a Brutal Swing. I would rather take it on my Sponge, which is Noctowl on this team. I'm not sure this is the correct play. So they go for the Brutal Swing, and then they bring in a Lantern. And I very much want them to expend some energy and don't come out of this with too much energy. So I'm trying to incentivize them to throw their energy by not throwing my energy. But no, they just decide to overfarm instead. Take the Shadow Ball, go up to 12 sparks, meaning they are at a Thunderbolt and a Surf at this point. I'm looking at the health of my Alolan Sandslash. A Surf does about 39%, so I think I can take it. So I bring in my Alolan Sandslash, hoping they would go for the Thunderbolt immediately, and they do go for a move after 7, so we get the CMP tie, and now we are Energy Dry on a Alolan Sandslash, meaning it's worth a lot less. We can just let it go. They only went for the Surf. It does take out a Alolan Sandslash, but now we can bring in Sableye. They go up to the Thunderbolt once again after 7. And this is a little bit of a tough call. I do decide to shield it up. It's only the Surf. Now they're 2 away from the next Surf. I am expecting them to try and catch. They do try to catch on the Guzzlord. It is dry, so we can farm them all the way down. The Lantern is 1 away from the Surf, so we can do 1 more Shadow Claw before going for the move. If they bring it in, they bring in a Deoxys instead. We do have to come out 1 away from the foul play. They are switch locked, so we don't have to worry too much about that. But the Deoxys, it takes 7 for the Rock Slide, 8 for the Thunderbolt, so we can just go up to the back-to-back foul play. Throw the first one to take out the Deoxys, and then get to the second one against the Lantern to, of course, take out the Lantern as well. I need to be better at timing that. Next game, lead into a Shadow Sableye. Shadow Shiny Sableye, very cool. Very interesting matchup. In the one-shield scenario, it's very close if Shadow Lord and Sandslash can win it straight Ice Punch, because it does about 47% Shadow on Shadow. So we do have to go for an Ice Punch 2 before they get to the next foul play. Of course, it takes 6, 6, 5 for the foul play, so we do outpace them. And then I'm looking at it. Do I need the Drill Run? I'm not sure. I go for the Ice Punch, hoping that this would be enough to take out the Sableye, but they do shield it up, so of course it's not enough. And then they go up to the CMP tie, and of course Sableye is going to win it. This way they come out with quite a bit of energy on the Sableye. I do decide to let my Shadow Lord and Sandslash go, and then I bring in my Noctowl. They bring in a Clefable, and this is a pretty decent matchup for Noctowl, especially up energy. I think the Clefable does win the Zero Shield scenario straight Media Mash in like straight up, because they pace to the Media Mash at the same rate as Noctowl paces to the Sky Attacks. But because we are ahead on energy, we will be able to outpace them. They go for a Moonblast. It takes 7 for the Moonblast, 6 for the Media Mash, and then 1 less for the third one. So we can go up to right before they get to the next Media Mash. The Sableye still has a move. This will take out the Clefable. But now if they bring in the Sableye, I think I'm just going to let my Noctowl go down. They bring in a Froslass instead. They realize they need to land 2 charge moves on my Sableye that I bring in, so they just concede the match. I don't think it was quite over, but my opponent definitely thought so. So we win that game. Next game, lead into a Deoxys. We bring in Sableye. They bring in Umbreon. And this is absolutely terrible. Of course, we will be able to make it 2 returns here to bring the Umbreon low, because when you're up 1 Shadow Claw, you will be able to outpace to 2 returns before they make it to 3 foul plays, and they need 3 foul plays in order to take out Sableye. So they will be able to overfarm quite a lot, but they should be one away from the third foul play here. And a lot of people don't want to take the next return. I'm doing something very crazy, like a little bit fun here. A lot of people don't want to take the third return or the second return if they can avoid it. So they go for a move because they know that if I'm not throwing my return immediately, if I'm not at it, they can just go for one snarl and then throw the foul play because it's 3 turns for the snarl, 2 turns for the Shadow Claw. So if I'm not throwing the return, they'll just be able to get off their foul play and like not have to worry about it. So I actually go for a bit of a fun trick here. I go for 1 Shadow Claw, which is 2 turns, and then I wait 1 turn so that it's 3 turns total, and then I go for the return to get it off on the CMP tie to leave the Umbreon energy dry. I could have potentially also undercharged the return to leave them with more HP to get a bigger farm on Shadow Alolan Sandslash, because I think getting more energy on Alolan Sandslash would have been more valuable than not having to take charge moves. I think even taking 2 foul plays and getting like a lot of energy on Alolan Sandslash would have been better. But they do make it to a foul play, which we have to take on the Alolan Sandslash. We bring in the Noctowl to get ahead on energy, hoping that it's not the Dewgong, but it is the Dewgong. And I wanted to showcase that very cool little trick, and also wanted to showcase that sometimes I do run into these types of teams, and there is nothing you can do about it. Like, you can't beat this team at all with this team, unfortunately. We can shield up this Icy Wind, we can go for another Sky Attack, but after this debuff, like even if it wasn't debuffed, like it's just not enough. Noctowl just can't do anything about the Dewgong. I do try to be a little bit fancy and like hope that my opponent would make some mistakes, so I overfarm with the Noctowl, try and save some energy, then bring in the Shadow Alolan Sandslash to potentially CMP tie them with the Drill Run. We do get off the Drill Run. It wasn't a CMP, but they still throw their energy with the Dewgong. And we still have the energy on Noctowl, and the attack drops are now cleared, so we can make it to the Shadow Ball to potentially take out the Dewgong. We do need the Shadow Ball, I think, against this Dewgong to take it out, but the Deoxys still has full health. And as I say, you're not beating this team. Like, it's just not happening, and that's why I would suggest you probably try my team on another day, and not when this team is very popular. Next game, lead into yet another Deoxys. They bring in a Registeel on my Sableye, which is not actually terrible. So we can overfarm quite a lot. It takes the equivalent of 8 Shadow Claws to get to the Zap Cannon, and because they threw 1 counter before swapping in, we should be able to go up to 9. So we go for the first one, and then we shield up the Zap Cannon to apply some pressure to this Registeel. Now we can overfarm a lot and go up to the back-to-back foul plays. My opponent could have CMP tied me on the first one, I think, and then not have to take the second one, but they do decide to not throw on the CMP tie, so I get off the second one as well. So now they're either going to have to shield or let themselves get farmed down, and it looks like if I shield this Zap Cannon, I'm going to be able to farm them all the way down afterwards. I don't think this is a very good Registeel, so I actually do decide to shield it up, and then they bring a Shadow Charizard up a shield. We can make it to the foul play. They're probably just going to load up to the Dragon Claw to take out my Sableye, because the Dragon Claw is enough at this point, and then they're going to be able to get to the Blast Burn on my Shadow Alolan Sandslash as well. So what I try to do here is I go up to almost a foul play, and then I try to catch a Dragon Claw on my Shadow Alolan Sandslash to waste some energy off of this Charizard, because they still have to throw the Blast Burn into this, and I'm just going to sacrifice it because there's this Deoxys in the back. My opponent perfectly overfarms up to over a Blast Burn once again, and they should be very close to another Dragon Claw, if not added. I don't really know what to do. I either can bring in the Sableye to hope that a Dragon Claw is not quite enough, or maybe they underestimated how much energy I had, but they do go for the Dragon Claw before I can make it to the foul play. I could have also brought in the Noctowl and just sacrificed it, because they will be able to make it to a Blast Burn on the Noctowl as well. If people like overfarm perfectly with Shadow Charizard, it is so difficult to overcome, as we see the Blast Burn just do massive damage. My opponent tries to catch a move on the Registeel, which was definitely a mistake. They could have just counted me down because I didn't have enough energy to do anything about it. But because they tried to catch, I get a lot of energy on the Noctowl, but we can't get to 2 Shadow Balls because, yeah, the Lock-Ons just did too much damage, and that was a very tough game. But GG. That was the last battle for today, and overall I would not recommend running this team right now. I think it has potential, but today I just ran into way too many teams that were way too difficult to overcome, and I didn't showcase most of the games where I just got completely RPS'd for obvious reasons, although there were quite a few of them. Other than that, fun fact of the day, This is a very simple one. Sableye beats Obstagoon in the Zero Shield scenario, even down one fast move. It still does so. It's still not a good matchup because you do lose the 1s and 2s, but just a good thing to be aware of. Other than that, if you like the video, remember to leave a like. If you're new here, subscribe to the channel. And of course, a massive thank you to the members of the channel. Your support is very much appreciated. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you next time.